Hello, everybody. I'm Ryan from Fireside Knicks, joined with my co-hosts Davin and Justin. And following a really strong finish to the FIBA tournament for RJ Barrett, I think that there were a lot of, you can kind of look at this tournament and say, yes, there were some ups, yes, there were some downs, but as a whole, it was a net positive for him. He started off pretty slow, but he was able to recuperate, four pretty good games, especially those last three were really, really good. Plays his tail off in that game against the U.S. and wins, gets Canada, I think, the bronze medal, if I'm not mistaken. Look, man, overall in the tournament, you can't just say it was like a points thing because RJ Barrett can always score points. Last year, he scored a lot of points. The year before that, he scored a lot of points. He was a plus 13.1 on average in the tournament in those 8 games. You can't argue he wasn't a net positive. You can't even argue he wasn't great. He was great in the tournament overall. And considering that the postseason, we saw a lot of positive signs. And now in the FIBA World Cup, we've seen some not just some positive signs. We had a very good stretch of basketball against some really good competition. It kind of leads to the question of whether this is a sign of what things could come for RJ Barrett this year, or, I guess, is it relevant? Is it going to be something that we're going to look at and say, can we, kind of boost what we're going to expect from him? Overall, we've seen RJ Barrett play great basketball. It's like we've never seen him have stretches of success. The question is, can he sustain it, right? And if this is any indication of the future, it's pretty encouraging, especially considering the stakes of each game, that these are important basketball games. There is something on the line. I know people are going to say these aren't NBA games. If you're playing in this tournament, this means something to you. You get to represent your country. You get to go out and show out. So, Justin, I want to get things started with you. Justin, tell me a little bit about how you feel about RJ Barrett's performance in the tournament and how much it moves the needle for you on RJ Barrett in year 5.
Yeah, the last video that we touched on about RJ Barrett, I was a little harsh on him. I'm not going to lie. I was kind of reactive to the tragic 4-point performance he had against Brazil. I can admit I may have been a little premature in, berating him the way I did, calling him inconsistent, all this and that, because he responded amazing after that. He had, a 16-point performance on 6 of 12 shooting in the game right after, and then ended the tournament with 3 straight 20-point games on really well efficiency. And I think the biggest test was that last game against Team USA, because that has the most NBA competition on it. These are guys he's constantly going to face in the regular season. I think that was the biggest test, and he showed out. 23 points, 8 for 16 from the field, 4 for 8 from 3. I mean, that's really encouraging. Something that's always been, in RJ's career is that he's bounced back well after some poor performances. I know that he's very inconsistent sometimes, up and down, but he's shown an ability to kind of leave the bad performances in the past and move on and really put his head down and bounce back. And that's exactly what he did in the tournament. Maybe he's watching Fireside Knicks and he saw me go off on him last time that he had a bad performance, because he must have been, he really showed up the last 4 games of the tournament, and I was very impressed. And I think it's very encouraging, like you said, too, because he had a very great performance in the playoffs, and now he's adding that momentum from the FIBA World Cup. And he's going to be carrying this momentum into the regular season, which I think is a great thing for him and the Knicks, So the Knicks really need him to, kind of step up and have a really big season after kind of a disappointing season last year. So the fact that he played like this is very encouraging. I'll sit here and say that I was a little premature in, calling him this inconsistent bum, basically, He proved me wrong. I'll sit here and say he proved me wrong. So, yeah, with that being said, I'm going to pass the mic over to Davin now.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think the word that was used was sustainability as far as RJ is concerned. And I think in RJ Barrett's case, he was just that all-4-team Canada. He had a couple of down performances, of course, but beside Dylan Brooks and Shai Gilgeous, my apologies, this guy is still putting on 20 points a game. He's still showing initiative on the defensive side of the ball. A very great two-way player he has been in this tournament, and I believe that bodes very well for the New York Knicks. Now, that's just really my biggest concern is, of course, that's our biggest concern here. How is he going to look on the Knicks? Now, RJ Barrett has already done the FIBA tournament before, but I believe this year, especially being able to place bronze, being able to place themselves in a position to qualify for the Olympics, I believe this definitely gives them a chance to take a step. RJ Barrett specifically to take a step, along with Brunson, along with Hart. RJ Barrett's now, he's coming into his own as a player, going into his 5th season now. So it's like, at this point, we want to see that step being taken. You know what I mean? We want to see that sustainability being fulfilled throughout the whole entire course of the season. Because, last year in the playoff series against Miami, Coach Tibbs kind of had a little adjustment there. He took RJ out of the lineup, taking RJ away from the game, kind of, but not both. Well, Twitter went crazy on RJ. We have haters everywhere. So we would love to see that sustainability throughout the whole entire season, and I can't wait to see what he has in store for us.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think that when we're looking at RJ Barrett, there are two major arguments. There is, and I would say I'm closer to the detractor side than I am to the RJ Barrett. Not saying, I think the other side wouldn't be called supporters. I think if you're a Knicks fan, you're an RJ Barrett supporter inherently, or you have to be. If you aren't, I think you're not a fan. Personally, that's my opinion. But I would say I'm more of a detractor than a believer. But I will say sustainability is really the X factor here. That's the thing we're looking at. And that's the thing that, you can't necessarily quantify whether a player can or can't sustain performance. That's something that you either do or you don't. There is no underlying metric. There is no, he's unlucky or he's lucky or whatever it may be. You either do or you don't. That's just how it works. Maybe in 30, 40 years, we'll figure out ways to quantify it, but that's not what we have today. And one of the big things I saw in this tournament, or when you're looking at the box scores, we're looking at highlights and all that stuff, you're obviously going to see the good and you'll rarely see the bad in highlights, but watching these games, watching the shot selection, he is taking what the defense is giving him, which is something that he struggles with, I feel like, at the NBA level. Sometimes what he'll go out and do is try to be the hero, try to be, hey, I'm RJ Barrett. I was drafted to be a number one option. That's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to force my way into these shots. And those weren't going for him. The 3-point shot in this tournament, it was really good. And we've had stretches, not just stretches, we've had years where he's been a great shooter. And then, in the past season, he completely lost that shot. If RJ Barrett's a good 3-point shooter and kind of, changes his mentality as an NBA player from, I have to be a number one option, I absolutely have to take as many shots as possible and try to win this game through my scoring, and shifts more into, I'm supposed to be a good defender, I can hit my 3-point shots, I can play to what the defense is giving me and to what the game calls for, I think he's more than capable of doing that. I think the question isn't, is he talented? I think that's kind of come out the door. The question is, does he have what it takes to sustain his performance? Does he know what his role is in the NBA? And partially you can say that the kind of the turmoil or the turbulence of the Knicks roster and kind of things that's happened over the last 3 or 4 years have changed their ability or their plans for him. No one foresaw Julius Randle becoming a 2-time All-NBA guy when he first signed here, especially after that first season. Not that no one foresaw what Jalen Brunson did, but I think Jalen Brunson overperformed what we expected from him. I think he was better than expected, and that speaks to just how good of a season he's had. But RJ Barrett's never had a year where he's been able to be the number one guy, despite that being what he was drafted to be. Now he has to adjust. Now he has to change the player he is. And that's going to better the team, and that's going to better his future with the Knicks. And, even if he gets traded or even if he doesn't end his career with the Knicks, it'll help him in his NBA career in general. So I guess the question now I want to ask Justin, and I hope that, we're able to have a good discussion about this. Does this move the needle? Like, I know I asked this initially, but does this, how much, if you had a confidence meter for RJ Barrett, how many points does it go up, or does it go up at all? I'm imagining it doesn't go down, so I'm not going to suggest that. But Justin, is it going up a lot for you? How much stock do you take into a FIBA performance?
Well, the FIBA performance itself, you can't really read too far into. We've seen some players have amazing FIBA performances, and then they're forgettable, really, in the NBA. I mean, we just saw Rondae Hollis-Jefferson have an amazing performance when his team was in the FIBA Cup. He hasn't played in the NBA in years, So, I mean, you can't take solely off of that. You can't base your opinion solely off of that. But however, considering that he's coming off a successful playoff performance and he carried that momentum into this tournament, I think that's a big thing. Obviously, and like I said earlier too, the Team USA game I think was his biggest test, because that's against the most NBA competition. It's a pretty high stakes game. Obviously, it's not for a gold medal, but there is a prize at the end of that game. You get a bronze medal for that game. So it was a pretty high stakes game. And RJ showed up for that game. Really great game, like I said, against Team USA, which is his biggest test. So as far as moving the needle, I don't know if I would say it moves the needle to, raising the Knicks ceiling, but I definitely have more confidence in him. I definitely have more confidence in RJ. We've seen stretches where he's been dominant at times. I mean, the second half of the 2022 season, the season where we missed the playoffs or whatever, and Randall really struggled, RJ kind of took over in the second half and was the primary ball handler. I believe he averaged about 24, 25 points a game that entire second half. You know what I mean? So we've seen him have really great stretches, and like you said earlier, he's been a good shooter in the past too. He had a season in 2021 where he shot 40% from three. He's done certain things well at different points in his career. I'm kind of just waiting for him to put all of that together, instead of having one good season where he shoots good from three, one good season where he's a primary ball handler and scorer, and one good season where he's a primary defender, playing really great defense. I want to see him put that all together and truly maximize his potential. You know what I mean? Instead of just showing me little flashes here and there, put it all together. That's really what I want to see. I feel like that would move the needle. If that ever happens this season, that would move the needle. You basically give the Knicks 3 stars. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit here and call RJ Barrett a star right now, but if you can get an improved version of him, dude, you're golden, really. You know what I mean? You're set up with a really nice trio of Brunson, Barrett, and Randall. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
No, honestly, a star. Call him a star, man. I believe RJ Barrett, like the needle being moved, I believe this is all about his confidence. I believe his defense up an ante. I believe his offense is going to go up a notch, just smaller, because Julius Randle, honestly, we saw how tired he got. We need someone else to be able to operate around what Julius Randle cannot, hold 48 minutes. We're not going to expect Julius Randle to go 110%. But at the same time, you have a guy like RJ Barrett who's really honing into his game this summer. And that's what I believe FIBA is really about. Honestly, besides the competition level, these guys are going to come into the start of the season in mid-season form. These guys have been working out all summer. So when season rolls around at the end of October, I'm going to be expecting a good, maybe a 30-point performance in that first couple of games from RJ Barrett, because he has it in him. He's been the second best player on this team, Canada, the whole entire time. I mean, besides Dylan Brooks having this monster of a game in this last game against USA, it's been RJ Barrett. It's been Shai Gilgeous. It's been these guys facilitating. It's been these guys cooperating, being vocal amongst their whole entire team. And it's been told, like Coach Tibbs, he said in the playoffs last year, we're going to need people to sacrifice and put the team first. And I believe that's something RJ really owns into in this summer, because he's doing nothing but taking the lead. We saw him grittying, being so happy to qualify for the Olympics next year after Canada got the berth that they did. So it's like, man, what's the ceiling? The sky's the limit for the New York Knicks next season. And I'm not just saying that. I'm not just saying that as a Knicks fan. But if you really look at the Eastern Conference, you look at the stars we have, Brunson, you have Randall, and now you have a young emerging RJ Barrett. Some of these guys will be all-stars next season. That will happen. And the New York Knicks are going to be a force in the Eastern Conference. And that's not just me being a fan of the team. It's legit. This roster's stacked. Tom Thibodeau has done a fantastic job formulating the culture that needs to be cultivated here for the Knicks. So it's just a matter of time, and it really is just a matter of time.
Yeah, and I'd agree. And the big thing for me is that RJ Barrett wasn't the lead shot taker for Canada, and he still had a huge impact, right? Because that's the role he's going to have to play with the Knicks. If he had gone out and, he was the number one option, that's how he succeeded, well, how is that going to translate to games with the Knicks? And I think the big thing for me, and you guys both touched on this, is if RJ Barrett takes that consistent, just kind of puts it all together, is consistent, this team is that much better. This team is that much more dynamic. That team is that much more efficient. The Knicks struggled with efficiency and perimeter defense last year. Those were two things that when they lost games and when they lost to Miami, those killed, right? They would give up big threes against Miami. They would struggle to, hit their threes, or they would struggle to make efficient shots. They took it. It took a lot of shots for them to score. Now, they do rebound very well. They were very good in offensive rebounding. They were very good at rebounding in general, thanks to Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein. But if your offense is centered around your ability to get rebounds and not your ability to make shots, I don't think that's going to work in the postseason. I'm not going to sit here and definitively claim that because I don't have the data in front of me or anything like that. But if you look at teams that have historically won, they have been teams that could shoot, right? The Lakers, I think, in 2020 were the only team to not finish top 10 in three-point percentage and win the title in the last decade. You have to be able to shoot to win. If RJ Barrett can have the three-point shot that we saw in 2020 and 2021, and if we get the defense we saw in 2020, that's a player that helps you win a title, right? That's a player that, coupled with a guy like Jalen Brunson, year 3 of Quentin Grimes, or if Josh Hart starts, I don't really know how that's going to play out, or even DiVincenzo. I assume Grimes is going to keep starting, but one of those 3 guys, they kind of place the same role in an offense. Shoot, play some good defense. That's kind of their thing. You have Mitchell Robinson, who you hope is healthy enough. Isaiah Hartenstein has proved himself to be a more than capable backup. Randall is going to be coming back from foot surgery. So even though I've said consistently all episode, hey, RJ isn't going to be asked to be number 1 option, there could be situations where he's going to be, the number 2, or Randall's going to need some games off. Davin, I think you made a great point of hey, Julius Randle got tired and we didn't have him for stretch in the postseason. When we did, he was hurt. You can't just have Jalen Brunson do everything, right? That's not how that works. Even if it was I mean, look at like Jokic before this year, right? Like he couldn't get to the finals, and he was one of, if not the best player in the NBA. Giannis doesn't make the finals every year, and I mean, you could argue he's the best player in the NBA, and there were definitely stretches where he 100% was. So you need to have a good team around you. You need to have the guys around you to get the job done. And ultimately, if RJ Barrett can translate this success, maybe it's just a confidence thing. Who knows? If he can translate it to being a little more consistent and being a little more sure of himself in the regular season this year, I think the Knicks are going to have a very fun season. But we'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section below. Let us know what you guys think. Does this FIBA performance, does it move you at all? Do you feel like we're underplaying it, overplaying it? We'd love to know what you guys think. Give us your opinions in the comment section below, and you guys can check us out on social media as well and talk and continue the conversation there. We're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and of course this YouTube page. The audio version of this podcast will be on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and you guys can check out our personal Twitter accounts. They're above our heads. I'm not calling it anything other than Twitter, and we'll see you guys in the next episode, everyone. Peace out.